9 days away from a painful and unnecessary government shutdown, House Republicans' inability to responsibly govern is so widely recognized that some of its own members are publicly calling it out and giving public praise for former Democratic Speaker Nancy Pelosi. But before we unpack all that, if you haven't yet, please hit that like, subscribe, and the alert bell. Maybe check out my Patreon. I'd appreciate the support. All right, folks, times are a-changing. Again, the chaos within the House Republican Conference is just escalating. They are failing again and again and again to not only fund the government or pass a continuing resolution, which basically buys the government 30 more days. It's like a stopgap measure to buy them some breathing room. They can't even do that. And they've officially thrown in the towel for the weekend and are heading home. But it's so bad that members of their own conference are publicly calling out the chaos and giving kudos, giving props to former Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. I want to play this clip. We're going to play a couple more to really drive this home.
Understand if we shut down the Ukraine said that. Speaker? I have my questions. I have my doubts right now because I'm seeing we need leadership, ma'am. We don't need someone just to say we got 218 votes or whatever that jumps on the train after it leaves the station. We need some people. Speaker Pelosi, for instance, I'll give you I don't agree with her ever, hardly on anything, but she was pretty successful in the way she did it was she put an issue out amongst her caucus. She met with them. She got she figured out what they wanted, and then they put it on the floor and they passed it and they rallied around it. A lot of work goes into that, but we're not seeing that. I'm not seeing that work right now.
I know that might not seem like much, but I'm still blown away at just hearing it. For a sitting Republican congressman, Tim Burchett, who is pretty far freaking right, we've covered him in previous videos, for him to not only publicly rail against his own leader and his own party, but to then in turn, as a contrast, praise Nancy Pelosi, who is up there with Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, Barack Obama's tan suit, Hunter Biden's laptop in terms of the pantheon of Republican boogeymen, for him to publicly give her kudos, not just like offhandedly, but to like go on for like 20 or 30 seconds about how awesome she was as a speaker is just mind-blowing, okay? But it's true. And the reason I'm bringing this up is not only to stick it to Republicans a bit, which is always fun, but also to emphasize the fact, and it is a fact, and we're going to emphasize it every time a major example comes across, and we'll never run out of examples because it's never going to change. The Republican Party is not a serious governing party. They are a cabal, a loosely aligned cabal at this point because there's so many disparate interests and disparate grasps on reality. They are a loosely aligned cabal of culture warriors. They care, as I've said before, only about if the green M&M is wearing high heels instead of flats, whether or not Joe Biden is coming to rip out your gas stove, stuff like that. The word woke, that's all they care about in terms of producing material positive benefits. Not just, it'd be bad enough, as I've said, if they didn't want to produce material benefits for their left-leaning constituents or their progressive constituents. They don't even produce material benefits for their conservative constituents. They're not making lives better for their right-wing voters because they're just incapable of doing it. And so the Democrats, for all their faults, are the vastly superior governing party. Much more responsible, much more effective, better. That is a fact. That's not a matter of opinion. And the Democratic Party's official website, official Twitter page, put together this nice contrast between the two, which juxtaposes them so beautifully. So let's watch it.
It's hard to pass everything in this place. We started out in a 5-seat majority. I got one member who's now resigned. We got a couple members who are out as well. Anything we do is pretty tough.
I'll go back and read that part. So with the same slim majority, under Nancy Pelosi, Democrats were able to pass the bipartisan infrastructure law, the first major gun safety legislation in decades, the CHIPS and Science Act, the PACT Act, the Reauthorize the Violence Against Women Act, the Respect for Marriage Act, HBCUs. Oh my gosh. Like, it's so many that I can't even keep up with it. The Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act, the American Rescue Plan, the largest climate investment in history, lowered prescription drug costs, locked in lower healthcare costs, made the ultra-rich start to pay their fair share, lowered energy costs, and created American manufacturing jobs, more than 800,000, as a matter of fact. Okay? The contrast could not be clearer, folks. Our elections are going to be pretty tight because we are a relatively polarized society. And to be sure, there are millions upon millions upon millions of Americans who actively support the Republican Party. It's not like the GOP is entirely without a voting base. But to those voters, if you're watching, or if you who are watching know Republican voters, if they're your friends or family members or whatever, ask them, why are you voting for them? What are they doing for you? You should be voting for a party that takes governing seriously. That's the point. I understand that Republicans, like the Republican ideology, especially since, President Reagan, who, what does he say? The 9 scariest words are, hi, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. They really locked in this idea that the government is a force of evil, right? So it's almost baked into the ideology. But it's almost like, okay, if that's the presumption, then you should be voting for people, regardless of party, since you're voting, so you're putting people in government with your vote, period, right? That's the goal. Somebody has to be your senator, somebody has to be your governor, somebody has to be your congressman, somebody has to be the president. So how about you put someone in those incredibly important, sensitive positions that you think will make the government better? That's the thing. It's like, let's litigate our genuine philosophical disagreements about what the government should be doing or how the government should approach perhaps what we both agree they should be doing. Perhaps we all agree on a particular goal, and we just disagree legitimately about how that goal should be accomplished. Well, how about you put people in those positions who take the job seriously and aren't just good for BS, nonsense, culture war stuff? I want to play this other clip by the Democratic leader in the House, the guy who took Nancy Pelosi's place when she retired from leadership. She's still in Congress, but she's no longer part of Democratic leadership. Hakeem Jeffries, the Democratic leader. This is what he has to say about the pending government shutdown.
2018 into 19, same thing. They shut the government down for 35 days. By the way, when the government shutdown began, Donald Trump was president. Republicans controlled the House and the Senate in December of 2018. They shut themselves down. That's how much it's in their DNA. That time, what was the extreme ransom note? We want you to waste billions of dollars of taxpayer money to fund Trump's ineffective medieval border wall. Once again, we held firm, refused to pay their ransom note, and we were able to get the government reopened. Why are we going down this road again? We know how it's going to end. We're not paying a ransom note so you can jam your extreme ideology down the throats of the American people and hurt everyday Americans. We never have, and we never will.
Well said. And once again, it illustrates the point. The GOP is not a serious governing party. Folks, one of, again, the recurring themes of this channel is to identify that. It's not to say that the Democrats are perfect or not. It's not to say that you can't have legitimate disagreements with other Democrats, even if you are one. But it's this. I'm tired of the both sidesism, and so should you, and the false equivalences. I use very strong language so often, but because it's true, because it's simply reinforced by fact, and nobody can meaningfully challenge it. The Republican Party is a joke. It's dangerous. It's incredibly dangerous. It should be taken seriously in terms of the threat it poses to our democratic republic, to be sure. But in terms of, again, being a responsible governing party, they're not. And they show no signs of even trending in that direction. They suck at actually governing. They are inferior in all ways that matter. So if you are a Republican voter, if you are a conservative, I would beg you to reconsider where you assign your vote. This party is doing nothing for you. That's why, even set the federal level aside, look at the states. most of the poorest, least educated, least healthy, most federally dependent states in this country are Republican-led. What are they doing for you on a state level? 2024 is around the corner. Elections are coming up. The stakes could not be higher because the bad faith Republicans who abuse their constituents, and that's it, that is what it is. Again, it would be bad enough if they were just ignoring the needs of marginalized groups and their progressive constituents and just looking out for their conservative constituents, but they're not even doing that. So with an election right around the corner, I would urge you to reconsider how you vote and vote blue in November 2024, no matter who.